All right, so as you can see, I'm having a rig set up already for the fingers, and I wanna, as you can see, I'm having these controllers that are attached to the joints, right? So whenever I rotate the controllers, it will rotate the joints for me. And as you can see, for each controller, I'm having one group that contains those numbers, and it will match the orientation of the controllers to the joints, right? If you remember that. You were creating these groups to maintain the orientation of the controllers to match to the joints, okay? Now I want to add an attribute that is called master rotation that will rotate all of these controllers at the same time to create one simple fisting for the finger, for all the fingers at the same time. And I called it master rotation. And another one that I've created is the finger spread, which will actually open up and close all the fingers at the same time. All right. So if I deleted the connections for the index finger for now, just to show you what's going on, and I'm going to do it from scratch for the index finger. But for the rest of them, it's already set up. So if I control the master rotation, you can see that all these fingers are actually curled in, right? So this is what I'm looking for, the master rotation. And the finger spread is actually going to open up and close the fingers at the same time. As you can see, it's not set up for the index. So I'm going to do it for the index right now, right? So let's go back and see what we have on the controllers. Again, on the controllers, I'm having one extra group that contains all those numbers that are matched, that are trying to maintain the orientation to match to the joints. So now that I want to create that master rotation on these controllers, I need to have an extra group on these controllers. So when I create a straight connection from master rotation coming to these controllers, I will still have the freedom of animating each individual controller. If I do the connection on the controllers, I will lose the option, I will lose the freedom of animating the controllers because they will have the input connection assigned to them. Okay? Again, if I directly connect this master rotation, let's do that actually. Let's make a straight connection from that master rotation attribute, which is here, master rotation, and connect it directly to this controller, which axis, rotation y-axis. So if I load it here and connect the master rotation to rotate y of this controller, it's working now. So if I increase the master rotation, you can see that it's master rotation. So let's add some numbers here. 45 degrees. Oops. Sorry? Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes. Rotation. All right, so it's working on the controller, on the last joint of the controller, but the problem here is that I have lost the control over this attribute. I won't be able to animate it anymore. I won't be able to set a keyframe on this anymore. So I'm losing this freedom. So let's go back and do it on a group on top of the controller. So I'm going to break the connection on this rotation. I don't want to have this connection anymore. And I'm going to assign or connect this attribute to a group that I will create on top of this controller. So that group will receive all those connections from the master rotation, and yet I'm able to animate the controller itself. Okay? And now I won't be able to do that on this group that I already have. That's because I have some orientation or rotation values on the group. And if I want to control the rotation on the group, actually the numbers won't match. I mean, I will have some problems. The orientation, I mean, it won't work. As you can see, I'm having some non-zero numbers. If I make a straight connection coming from the master rotation, I will zero out those numbers. I don't want to lose those numbers. Okay? So I have to create an extra group on top of each controller to be able to receive those connections without touching this group that I already have here. Okay? I don't want to touch these. So I'm going to select each controller. I'm going to group them to themselves. So group, all right? And I'm going to name it. Let's see what I have for the other groups. I'm going to name it, for example, group 1, and the other one I'm going to name it 2. And I'm going to do it for all of these controllers. So Control G, copy this name and paste it over here. And one more for this one. All right. Now I'm having extra groups on top of each controller, which have the same orientation to the controllers and the joints, and I can do something with them without doing anything on the controllers. All right, so let's do that. Let's bring up the master rotation here again in the connection editor. I'm using the connection editor. If you don't know where to find it, it's actually in the Windows, I think General Editors, Connection Editor. Okay. So I'm gonna load those groups that I've created this time. All right, and then connect the master rotation to the rotation Y value of each one of these groups. Reload right. So I'm selecting this group, not the controller, just the group. And connect the master rotation to the rotation Y of that group. I'm selecting this controller, hit up to go to the group, or I can simply go to the outliner and select the group and load it here and connect the master rotation to the rotation Y of this one too. All right. So now if I test it, you can see that now these controllers are also rotating, and yet I'm able to animate or move or rotate each one of these controllers without being worried about that input connection anymore. Okay? The connection is actually applied to the group on top of it. All right? So this is for the master controller. You should do the same thing for all of these fingers, for all of the groups, for all of the fingers. Now let's take care of the finger spread. So again, I already have this finger spread applied to those three fingers, and I want to do the same thing for the index finger. Let's close this connection editor. I don't need this anymore. As you can see, I'm having this joint here that will set or will say that I want to rotate these fingers around this anchor point. If I didn't have this extra joint here and I wanted to close these fingers, look what happened. What happens? So if I select, for example, this controller and try to close this, you can see that I'm not able to get rid of this gap at all, right? There's a gap between these fingers. I want to get rid of that when I want to close the fingers, right? So I need to actually rotate these joints based on this anchor point. So I created this anchor point, this extra joint here. So when I want to close these fingers, I can simply select this joint and close it from this point. Okay. But the problem here is that these joints are now connected to these controllers. They will not follow that joint anymore, right? So I should select this joint and parent constrain this group to this joint. So whenever I rotate this joint, it will rotate this controller, this group on top of this controller, based on this anchor point. Okay? So if I select this joint, select the upper group on the upper joint of the index finger, and do a parent constraint, or even orient constraint. It really doesn't matter. We just want to rotate it. So a parent constraint, maintain offset on, and apply. Now if I select this joint and rotate it, it will rotate the group. The group will rotate the controller will rotate the joint for me. Okay? So I'm creating this non-straightforward connection between this joint and these joints. All right? Now it's time to control this joint using that finger spread attribute that I've added here. Because right now I don't want to select the joint and rotate it. I want to use that attribute that I have already on this controller. right? So I just need to use a set-driven key here to be able to define the amount of orientation that I want on this joint. If I create a straight connection, that might not work. I mean, as you can see, we are having a special case here. We want to have, for example, a 50 degrees, 15 degrees, for example, on this finger, maybe 25 degrees, minus 25 degrees on this one. So we can't use a straight connection on this. I have to go with set-driven key. So I will go to, I will select the controller and go to set-driven key here. I have to select one attribute, set-driven key. Load this controller as the driver and load this joint as driven. Okay? And I want to control the rotate Z of this joint, right? So I will select rotate Z of the driven to be my driven attribute, and I'm going to select the fingers spread attribute as the driver. This is the default pose. The fingers spread is set to 0. The joint is in its default pose, default orientation, default rotation. I'm going to set a key. So the finger spread is selected, the rotation Z is selected, and I'm going to set a key. All right. Now I'm going to increase the finger spread to its maximum value. I'm not sure what's the maximum value for this attribute. Let's see. Okay, 100. So I reach to the maximum value for the fingers spread, and I'm going to close this finger. All right. Then I will select the fingers spread again, select the rotation Z again, and set a keyframe, set a key. Okay, so it's made for this one. Let's go back to the minimum value when I want to open up all the fingers. So I'm guessing that the minimum value on this attribute is negative 100, and I'm gonna open up this finger. All right, and set another keyframe. Now if I play with this finger spread, you can see that the index is also moving with this attribute now. All right. So that's it for the finger spread. You can do just simply you can parent constraint the group on top of this controller to this joint, and then control this joint using set-driven.